President Joe Biden is facing a serious issue with younger voters, and a new poll shows just how bad it is. According to new polling from Democratic firm Blueprint, obtained exclusively by Semaphore, young voters overwhelmingly believe that almost all politicians are corrupt and that the country will end up worse off than when they were born. And they themselves will not do as well as their parents. They will not do better than their parents for sure. To which I say, correct. Their assumptions are correct. As part of the online poll of 943 18 to 30-year-old registered voters, Blueprint asked participants to respond to a series of questions about the American political system. And hold on to your hats. Look, those of you who have been watching the show for a long time will not be at all surprised, because these are issues that we've talked about for a long time and a feeling that I've talked about for a long time. But newer viewers, you might be a little surprised, a little shocked, right? So now, 49% agreed to some extent that elections in this country do not represent people like them. Okay, fair enough. 51% agreed to some extent the political system in the US doesn't work for people like me. All right, don't disagree. 64% backed the statement that America is in decline. Wow. 65% agreed either strongly or somewhat that nearly all of our politicians are corrupt and make money from their political power. Only about 7% disagreed. So that right there, not at all surprised to see that result. Yes, I agree. Nearly all of our politicians are corrupted and make money from political power. So now, look, the politicians, they're not working for us. The system is not working for us. Who does the system work for? It works for wealthy donors. And yes, those wealthy donors are the reason that the politicians are corrupt. They have to take money from donors and corporations in order to run for office. It takes millions of dollars to run a campaign for higher office. And I'm talking about at the congressional level, at the House level. Obviously, the Senate, that takes a lot more money to win than a House race, which still takes a lot of money, but less than a Senate race. And so, look, you have this pay to play that is required for you to even be considered a candidate that could get on the ballot and that could even win. You have to have money. And of course, the money goes into the media. It goes in the media for messaging in order to get your message out. So anybody who doesn't have money or can't raise lots and lots of money from either the grassroots or from larger donors has no shot. They're at a massive disadvantage. So of course, you got to go where the money is. And that's one of the big problems. Our system is set up in a way where you have to either beg corporations for money or somehow raise enough from average working people to be able to afford to get your message out. And that is incredibly difficult to do. And you also have a two-party infrastructure that is not exactly kind to people who are outsiders, who are challenging this status quo. So Gen Z, just like millennials, see this system and they're incredibly depressed by it. Yes, absolutely. This is something, again, that I've been talking about for a long time, many years. And once again, I got to note that it is not just one party. It is both parties that have to, that work within this corrupted system. So the reason I bring that up is I'm not saying vote for Republicans. No, that's not going to make things better. It's going to hasten the decline. Republicans are awful. On just about pretty much every single issue, Republicans are terrible. Okay? But I also got to point out that Democrats, because of the corruption of the system and their inability to challenge the status quo, are not going to make the positive changes necessary on things like healthcare, on things like climate change, etc. They can do some small changes around the edges, but systemic change is not possible as long as you have politicians that have to take money from industry. We're not going to get, Medicare for all because we have a system where health insurance companies can blanket races and candidates with tens of millions of dollars in campaign cash. It's just not going to happen. So this is the system that we're in, and this is the system that is rigged against average working people in favor of large political donors and corporations. This is the issue, okay? Gen Z can see that. Gen Z knows that. And so they can also see other issues that are impacted by the corruption in our political system. Look, they can see it every time they check their bank account, every time they open their wallet, every time they look at and dream about owning a home someday. Because a lot of them know that they're not going to be able to. In fact, even after accounting for inflation, housing prices since 1965 have increased 118%. You know how much incomes have increased by that time? Within that time, 15%. In the last decade alone, the median home price had actually increased by about 30%, despite income only improving by 11%. It is not keeping up with the inflation of home prices. So you have Gen Z that is looking to be another generation of renters. Not only that, but Gen Z, even more educated than millennials, have the highest rate of being educated, and yet also end up having the highest rate of student loan debt. Education far more expensive, and at the end of the day, isn't actually worth as much. Even though if you do have a bachelor, you still end up making more on average. It still doesn't make up for the gigantic cost. According to a recent study conducted by online education platform Elevator, tuition fees have risen at twice the pace of household income every single decade since the 1950s. And that's, of course, a result of Ronald Reagan, right-wing, defunding higher education because, the young people were getting too smart. They're pushing back against the stuff that I want to do. I want to make them stupid. And I also want to make sure that people don't get an education, and that if they do, they're drowning in student loan debt. That was the whole purpose, the whole point. And we see that play out today. The people drowning in debt so that they don't fight the system. Return on investment, by the way, for that education that is even more expensive than ever is actually down 4 times over the last 70 years, by 4 times. So not only that, but during the pandemic, Gen Z faced the most amount of devastating layoffs, and almost 60% of Gen Zers say that their basic needs are no longer being met. This is not a situation where just stop eating avocado toast and drinking lattes. No, there's not enough money. There's not enough money for their basic needs. They don't make enough. You have so many that are stuck in the gig economy, as well as doing, traditional job plus gig job, that still can't seem to make ends meet. And this is why Zoomers are saying we have a very bleak outlook on life, on our country, on our economy, and we also happen to have the highest level of mental illness in any generation. Yeah, I believe it. Look, I'm a millennial. I'm 40. Okay, I get what the kids are going through. I see it because millennials, we went through the same thing. We're still going through the same thing. So add to it, by the way, getting back to the disillusion in our system, our institutions. The majority of Gen Z is against what's going on in Gaza. The Israeli government's assault on innocent people. They don't want us giving bombs to a government that happens to be using them against children. 2,000-pound bombs being dropped on tents and decapitating babies. I mean, that's what's going on. Evan Ross Smith, Blueprint's lead pollster, told Semaphore, quote, "I think these statements blow me away. The scale of these numbers with young voters. Young voters do not look at our politics and see any good guys. They see a dying empire led by bad people. I mean, that right there, that statement is so true. Yes, we're a dying empire led by bad people. Now, the problem is, what are we going to do about it? Because I don't want to be a dying empire led by bad people. Okay, I want to be like I do want to be the shining beacon of the hill, the shining city, right? I do want to be all the promises that America has made. Okay, the shining city, the land of opportunity. A place where you can actually do better than your parents. But that hasn't been true in my lifetime, and it certainly isn't true in the lifetimes of Gen Z. And it needs to be fixed. Now, Smith actually said, "Hey, look, there's a way that we can change this. We can turn this around. Step one," he says, "is more fully admitting that people are hurting." Yeah, yeah, just yeah. Particularly around the economy and inflation, and some recent news on that as well is that, oh look, these corporations that have been gouging us since the pandemic, some of them have actually had to admit that yeah, we've been gouging people too much and are agreed. Well, we're going to pull it back a little bit, and that's because people have not been able to afford basic things, groceries. These are grocery items that are being pared back at places like Amazon and Walmart. Like, they've had to drop their prices on just everyday things because people can't afford them anymore. That's basically an admission that they could have done this the entire time, but we're like, nah, we're gonna grab as much as we can, as much profit as we can. Yes, did they have increased costs during the pandemic? Absolutely. And did they pass it along to us? Absolutely. Did they then decide to get even more greedy and grab more off the top? Abso-freaking-lutely. That's what they did. And now, turns out they got caught doing it all along, and they're saying, oh, sorry, but we're not actually sorry, but we're actually going to pull back some of our prices. A little late. But again, this is why Gen Z and millennials, this is why we're so angry at all of this, okay? So now, getting back to Smith, he said, we also need to say that we're doing something about it, and that it's not all roses, and that communicating that really, really strongly, that we don't think everything is great. Okay, I mean, that's step one. Step two is actually doing something about it. Now, is President Joe Biden doing any of that? No, he's not saying anything is bad. He's saying everything's great. What? He's also saying things like Israel can never do any wrong. Oh, that red line? Go ahead and step over that. Because that's not actually a red line, and I didn't actually mean anything. And of course, the other thing is Trump is bad. Yes, Trump bad. I agree with Trump bad. I'm out here every day showing you how bad Trump is. Okay? That's the thing, though. It's not just about Trump bad. It's, what are you going to do to make everyone's lives better? That's it. Look, you wonder why young people are not excited about Joe Biden. This is why. Look, will I hold my nose and vote for him? Yes. And you can criticize me for that. You support genocidal warmonger. I don't support him, but I will hold my nose and vote for him to prevent somebody that is, basically to keep out Donald Trump. Someone who's even more genocidal and fascist and warmongery. But yeah, that's not enough, though, right? It's not enough. Look, I cannot say that I've ever voted in a general election since 2008, all right, when I fell for Hope and Change, for any reason other than to prevent someone worse from occupying that position. I'm being honest and saying I don't like it. And neither does Gen Z. And so Gen Z, unlike myself, might not hold their nose and vote for Biden. And so Biden, the onus is on the Democrats and Biden to do something about it, to earn those votes. And, unfortunately, I don't really see them at this moment taking any of this seriously. And that is not good.